Development will go ahead and convene this roundtable, but we'll just recess for the next 15 minutes as we await the attendance of some other individuals. So we'll come back into order at 2:15. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. It's about 2:07 in the afternoon. The Committee on Finance and Taxation, General Government Operations, and Youth Development, in conjunction with the Committee on DOE today.
Okay. Early Learning. Committee on Early Learning, Juvenile Justice, Public Education, and First Generation Initiatives.
Thank you, Senator Underwood. This is a joint roundtable discussion that we're going to be having with the Department of Administration and the Department of Education. Joining us is our Budget Chairman and Vice Speaker, B.J. Cruz. To my immediate right and to the immediate left of Senator Underwood is Senator Frank Logan Jr. Thank you for joining us, colleagues. If I can go ahead and invite the board members also up if they'd like to join us, the board members of the Department of Education, if you'd like to join us at all for the discussions, as well as the liaison from the Office of the Governor, and any other individuals who would like to join us, please. Mr. Duenas. Okay, I know a lot of us know each other, but just for formality's sake, we'll go ahead and introduce ourselves. Mr. Chairman, starting with you.
Thank you, Senator Mike, for still calling me chairman. I'm actually just a regular member right now. I relinquished my position because of policy. So I'm Dr. Jose Cruz, member of the Guam Board of Education. Thank you.
Ken Chargla, member of the Guam Education Board.
Ryan Torres, member of the Guam Education Board.
Vince Leongo, Governor's Special Assistant for Education.
Alfred Duenas, Deputy Director, Department of Administration.
Tony Blas, DOA.
John Fernandez, Superintendent, Guam Department of Education.
Good afternoon, Taling Taitino, Deputy Superintendent, Department of Education.
Thank you all very much for joining us. The reason Senator Underwood and I asked for us to have this roundtable is in the course of one of our hearings with the Department of Administration, one of the topics that came up was the financial position of the Department of Education. We have received some requests from vendors concerning payments, some of which are past due quite a bit. But in the course of the oversight hearing as well, it came out that the Department of Education has financial needs that need to be met. And so we wanted to bring the Department of Administration and the Department of Education to the same table so we can get a crystal clear picture as to the current financial position of the department and what the status is of any past due obligations and its outlook going into the remainder of the fiscal year. And Senator Underwood, if there's anything else that you'd like to add?
No, actually, I had asked Senator Nicolas to provide assistance with this, and this was due to the numerous phone calls I had received from vendors, and one of them was really a small vendor, and they were just really beyond themselves in being able to get payment from DOE, and so it's really in response to the concerns that have been articulated to us. So, go ahead.
Thank you, Senator Underwood. So I guess the first step will be to identify whether or not there is in fact an issue. So if we could ask the Department of Education to, I guess, update us on what their current financial position is and whether or not they're current in the fiscal year and the status of their vendor payables and any other financial issues that may be affecting the department at this time.
So thank you very much for allowing us this opportunity. I guess for the good of the joint committees, I know that one of the issues we're going to be talking about when we're going to get down to some of the numbers, and we prepared so I know there's circulated the EFSC output, and I'm hoping we're not going to have too many different numbers because we get caught up in some of that. We might get a little bit confused, but at the risk of doing that, I wanted to see if we could at least they should come out of the same numbers. And I know DOA, we met with DOA last week to reconcile any of those outstanding numbers. I want to see if we can at least work from this and then have the discussion, and if we have to relate it back. Just don't want to get caught up, though, in having too many competing numbers, and we'll spend all day doing that, and that may be worth it. But this is at least our picture, and we'll work from our picture, and I think DOA has the same picture of where we stand. So, as Taling is circulating that, let me just say thank you again for this opportunity to provide a brief overview and to be here with Department of Administration and as well as our board members. We recognize the job that the DOA does to meet the cash needs of the entire government, but we also know that we work with them on a weekly basis to ensure that as they do their job, DOE employees and students have the support we need on a regular basis with regard to the cash needs of our agency. And so this is an ongoing discussion. I know Director Blas and Deputy Taitano have an ongoing conversation about our needs, and this is something that we benefit from. And again, this partnership helps pay our employees, provide utilities, support to our facilities, maintain critical services and supplies to our schools, as you were referring to, and then allows us to serve over 31,000 students and their family each school year. Just as an overview, I want to say that as a department, we're doing well to manage the funds as we can. You've heard that we've just received our second consecutive clean audit for both our financial statement and compliance with our federal programs. We've improved our financial management system, provided training to employees to ensure that as we expend funds, as we prepare our budgets and plan for coming years, that we're doing so as effectively as possible, and with an eye towards ensuring that the resources are spent wisely and to the benefit of kids. As of May 30, 2015, well, as of June 1st, so this was just updated today, we are tracking a total of $220.2 million appropriated for our operations. And of that total appropriation, $5.3 million of that is expected to be taken to support the charter schools, leaving us with a net of the charter schools of $214.9 million. You'll find that under column A on page 1 at the bottom, $214.9 million to support our operations. Just to note that the part of that charter school funding was adjusted in mid-year when iLearn was approved to start. So part of that was unanticipated, but nevertheless, we're starting with a $214.9 million total available for operations. Of that amount, if you go to column F, total reserves are $15.4 million, which is approximately 7% of that total amount, leaving the department $199.5 million for operations. And then if you look at column B, 137.9 of that amount has been released in terms of allotments, followed by $136.6 million in cash. That's B and C on the bottom, that bottom line, B and C. So as we go forward, what we're looking for is the release of additional reserves. We've discussed this with DOA with regard to the 3% reserve requirement that was set in the Appropriations Act. Right now, there are reserves in excess of that amount are being held, but we've had the conversation already about aligning those amounts down to the 3%. The 3% reserve, additionally, if the government meets its revenue expectations by the end of third quarter, that 3% is supposed to be triggered to be released. So we're monitoring those reserves and have talked already about having additional relief now prior to the end of third quarter, and then hopefully at the third quarter, their revenues are coming in at the expected level. That trigger will automatically release the remainder of those reserves. Total reserves, again, at $15.4 million in column F. And then, of course, we're just continuing to track our allotments based on our allotment schedule and our cash needs, working with BBMR and DOA to ensure that there's a steady cash flow. The two issues that I wanted to raise, which are the reasons you're hearing some of the issues with the vendors, I'll do in two different ways. The first is to recognize that there is an issue with the vendor payments. Over the past 2 fiscal years, as the legislature is aware and the administration is aware, the Department of Education has experienced a shortfall of approximately $13 million total in the TEF funding. So in FY13 and 14, my understanding is that the revenue expectations were anticipating revaluation of the properties that revaluation was not implemented at that time, leaving us approximately $8 million short in 13, $5 million short in 14, and we've requested from the legislature and the governor any way to kind of mitigate that impact and to try to address it. And so what you're hearing now is as we attempt to catch up with our payments, and that shortfall has caused some of the delay in being able to get the sufficient cash to go towards our vendors. And we're seeing them at 3 different levels, on 4 different areas that I want to raise to your attention, just so let you know that we are aware of our vendor needs. And of course, they're calling us prior to calling you, but they're calling around just to see that their needs are met and we are aware of them. The first is our small suppliers, for whom a delay of payment is significant to their stability as a company. And so these, we understand that for some of these smaller vendors, that payment is going to be crucial to, I won't say their existence, but basically their stability as a company. We're dealing with large suppliers, for instance, our cleaning suppliers, where they operate in numerous schools, let's say over 30 of our schools, one of our vendors. When they have payment issues, they then have come back and if we're too delayed, threaten cut off services until such time as payment is made. So we deal with that on that other side of the fence. We are dealing with fellow government agencies such as GPA and GWA to ensure that our utilities are kept going. On a monthly basis, we work with them and with DOA to keep those utilities in place. And increasingly, it's become more challenging to do so. But nevertheless, because they're government partners, we work together to try to get as much time as needed to allow for the cash to come in to go to pay our utilities. And then the fourth piece, I'll put this forward. It's we have major vendors, and one of them is our third-party fiduciary, who is also affected, by the cash issues with regard to the department. A delay in payment risks a change in the scope of services that they'll be able to provide, and when that happens, we get a call from USAID to inquire as to whether there's going to be any relief. And so we had one of those calls about a week and a half ago, and I think the concern is if the third-party services are reduced, if there may be potentially be an impact on access to federal funds, which is we approximate around $60 million in federal funds coming in each year from consolidated grants, special education, some discretionary grants, and so forth. So I guess that first point is to say we are getting those calls across the spectrum, and then DOA gets the call from us, and we say, is there going to be cash to back these allotments, and how can we work together to make sure that cash is flowing, given that we're also dealing with the prior year shortfall which has caused some of this delay. So the second issue gets to the heart of that, which is the Taft revenues. Again, $13 million combined for FY13 and 14. One of the concerns we have is whether or not we are going to achieve the projected level of Taft revenues this year, understanding that the revaluation is being implemented and understanding there are a variety of other issues on the table with regard to that implementation and having those revenues collected. Just to paint the picture, if the revenues from Taft and come in at the same level as they did last year, we will be short approximately $5 million in our budget. Now, if they come in higher than that, obviously it's less. But just given if they come in at the exact same level, our budget was built on a projected higher amount of revenues to be collected, and so we would rely on DOA and Department of Revenue and Tax to give us that information as to when we need to worry about that. But that's one of the concerns we've had over time, and one of the discussions we've had with our board as to whether we can find a way to either stabilize the projection or come in with a more conservative projection, just so we know what our budget is as we head into every year. But I think the Taft revenues, those $13 million, we're still looking for a solution, and we're keeping an eye on this year to make sure that we don't have to worry for this coming year. But either way, as they start to combine, those funds go directly to utilities and our operations, and when we don't have the cash coming in to support those areas, these problems will start to accrue, and that's where we are today. So we're balancing as much as possible. We're prioritizing our payables. We're working with DOA on a daily basis. As the vendors call, we call them, they call us. We're trying to make sure we can, the red flags are raised so that we can continue to make it a priority to pay for the services rendered. Otherwise, we would have to look at, how to adjust the services going forward till we can close out this fiscal year.
So thank you, John. So the explanation is we're affecting small suppliers, large suppliers, other agencies, and third-party fiduciary because of the $13.3 million shortfall that is recorded for FY 2013 and FY 2014.
I think the explanation is that contributes significantly to the delays that have already occurred. So if you didn't get paid in 13, you were carrying over that. We're trying to find ways to cover those costs, even though these are prior year obligations, that they become prior year obligations. So if you're a vendor and you're saying that this is my experience and these are the amounts owed, you're getting paid. You're just not getting paid at the same, at a preferable time period. We've been able to manage, but we recognize that we're waiting for that cash to come in just to deal with our vendors, and we're negotiating those time frames with our vendors so we can keep services continuing. Our focus this year was really ensuring that recognizing the differences in the property tax revaluation time frame, recognizing the other cash obligations of the department, was to make sure that as the government was looking at its cash issues, that we were getting them on a timely basis so that we can continue to catch up and to keep things going. So we haven't received any. We don't have a solution yet to the $13 million. So right now, that means we're trying to just hold steady and balance our priorities so we can address the vendors, whether it's the small supplier this time, whether it's the large suppliers with the aged, more lengthy aged payables. That's an ongoing process that we're doing internally to try to balance the outcry that we're hearing.
And that's why I'm glad that we're having the roundtable, because in the hearing that we had, we discussed the surplus in 2013 and the paper deficit in 2014. But it's clear that, and in our discussions, Mr. Blas, it was shared in the hearing, and I remember clearly because this is what made me really interested in having this roundtable. You shared that the shortfall in TEF in FY 2013 and FY 2014 was made up with revenue from the general fund. But now DOE is saying that it was never made up because they're trying to catch up with FY 2015 revenue. So I need a concrete understanding. Well, I guess there's several things that need to be concrete. The first is, did we have a surplus in 2013? And if we did, then why was DOE still short $8.3 million? And the second question is, with respect to the $5 million paper deficit, isn't that in actuality a real deficit because we're kiting vendors and making them have to wait for 2015 money to pay them down? And if these are both the realities, then, and is DOE still being affected by this $13.3 million hangover, then what's the status of this $12 million in reserves? And I don't like to keep coming back to it, but I have to. Why did we get testimony back in November that we can afford pay raises for elected and appointed officials when we have a $13 million hangover still affecting 2015 payments? So if you can help me to understand all of
give
that.
me some,
Sure.
Just give me, at least from the DOA perspective, I know we're in constant communication with the superintendent and also telling the vice, I guess, associate superintendent for finance, but we're on top of this. I guess to let you know from 2014, I guess Guam DOE was closed with an operating deficit of $26.9 million in fiscal 2014. Out of the 26.9, $5 million was a result of the Territory Education Facilities Fund. And of course, at the time, I believe DOA requested a supplemental budget to address the $5 million in the operation shortfall from 2014. I don't know what happened to that. But in fact, based on the DOE 2014 balance sheet, their cumulative shortfall is 18.5, which that's the amount that's showing for the liabilities in the audit report. And the body will have to address how to eventually clear that this fund, as there's no obvious, I guess, immediate funding to address that issue. In 2015, right now, DOE is current with DOE's operational payments from the general fund and the TF based on the allotment releases. And in fact, I'm sure, I think John just spoke of, we're up to speed 217 ours is 214, and we paid $137 million of the allotment release. We paid 136, 6.9, 521, and there's available funds of 1.277, and we're working on that. That's part of the operation of our cash. And so, at the end of the day, we know that on the second installment of the TF collections, we're able to release, Guam Department of Education an additional, like maybe $2.7 million, depending on the collections that we receive. We hope to receive additional TF revenues to fund because we've been helping them on the DOE utility payments for the remainder of the fiscal year, and of course we're hoping the shortfall will not exceed the $2.2 million, because depending on the collections we have. The budgeted revenues for TF is $28,568,685. And right now, I think we've collected about $21 million right now, thus far, in our collections. And now, because I'm working with the superintendent and DOE, now I guess they're reviewing their own situation, how to address that. And DOE has also made, of course, we want to make it very clear that the Guam. Guam Department of Education has been our priority, and we continue to help them with the additional funding sources to assist them. For example, we just paid. We paid at least for the reserve fund in 2013, the 2%, $5.4 million. That's the question was asked in our oversight. But again, I want to reiterate one more time that we are fully committed to and release the 100% of the general fund allotments that's asked from us. But again, these are the things that they're going through with the shortfall on 2014 and 2013 TF shortages. And so I think John just spoke to that about there's contractual obligations, they have to pay it, and I'm sure they're managing their cash with the sources they have at that time. So we've done our part. I mean, we continue to help them in every way that we can with the allotment releases and the funding sources that's allowed. We've been doing it, and we continue to do it.
So did we have a surplus in 2013?
In 2013,
a budgetary surplus?
We did, but
so how come DOE is still being affected by this 8.3 million TEF shortage that's now coming back and being the reason why we're not?
We're talking about there's GASB 54. That's the GASB standards. So that's the consolidated financials for the entire government. So one of them is DOE, and so but DOE has its own. I guess they have their own. I guess their overview. So they've been doing whatever they can within the sources they have before them. So the surplus is one component. That's the whole combination of all the GASB 54 standards. So for the surplus. So, but we're talking about today. We have, this is 2015. We're giving them whatever we can to assist them in every way. There are some deficit situations that happen in their operational things at DOE. So that's something they can address on their own. And unless you have a funding source to help them out to mitigate their.
Well, for me, what I'm really trying to get a handle on is how do we make any kind of budget going forward, and how do we make any kind of financial projections and determinations going forward when one day we're in a surplus in 2013 and the next day we're being told DOE was short 8.3 million, but in the same conversation we're being told that it's Gatsby, and that was then, and this is now. So
Senator,
I don't want to make a
why don't you
decision
look at the
today, and then
2014
next
look at the
fiscal year.
2014 and 2013 audits. Go back and look at the audits. It tells you what happened to all. Again, I read it one time in 2014. There was a $26.9 million in a DA. They closed with an operating deficit, and out of the 26.9, there was a shortfall of 8.3 in 2013 and $5 million in 2014. So I know this is they're managing the contractual obligations. They're doing their part to continue to manage with what the sources of funding that they have. And that's what we need.
No, I know what they're
We have
doing.
to
I think they're doing a
together.
great job, given the resources that they have and the financial realities they have to deal with.
Yes.
For me, I'm trying to understand, how do I do my job when this is the kind of information that we have to operate with, and then 2 years later, reality does not fit with what we were told at the time.
Yeah.
And so, so what's going to happen to DOE 2 years from now? We're saying today that they're getting all their allotments and they're getting, they're tracking to get all their appropriation, but 2 years from now, are they going to be short 26 million instead of just 13 million? The reality behind the numbers is so important in order for us to make sure that we're funding our priorities and we're not going to get, caught with these kind of surprises. But if what DOE is coming back and telling us is that the reason why we have unpaid suppliers, small, large, and third-party fiduciaries, which is putting an additional risk on federal funds, is because of money that's supposed to have been there in 2013 and 2014 that wasn't there, but we were always told in 2013 that we had a surplus, and going into 2014 that we had we didn't even know we had a deficit at the time. We were told all throughout the fiscal year 2014, and I remember we were told over and over again by BBMR and DOA, we're tracking in the black, we're tracking in the black. And we went into the election year, everybody thinking that, we're not in the red, only to come to find out now that right after the election, not only did we have this whole pay raise fiasco, but now DOE is coming back and saying, oh, well, back in 2013 there was this, and back in 2014 there was that. And I'm still not satisfied with the explanation as to how we did not deal with those two things, and here we are trying to solve the problem. And it makes me very uncomfortable with how are we going to make sure this doesn't repeat itself going forward into the future, because what was being said at the time is not consistent with what everybody's having to deal with now. And unfortunately, DOE is having to try and figure out how to move money from pot to pot and ask DOA every day, daily, for money to try and help them make it through to the next payroll or whatever. But we were never under the understanding that was going to be the case.
Yes, and we're up to date, except for the 1.277 that we have available, right? Kat, for available funding that we have before us.
Okay. Can I?
Kathy.
Good afternoon, Senator. I'm looking at DOE's financial statements. This is the audit report, and it's a comparative between 13 and 14. Okay, and if we look at the operational, am I speaking too close? Okay, if we look at the operational deficit, it's showing 32.8 million. But my recollection of FY13, and DOE can correct me if I'm wrong, out of the 32.8 million, 32.4 million are related to the ARA expenditures. So they had incurred about a 400,000 operating shortfall. Their shortfall they're referring to is cumulative with regards to their, I believe it's around the 14 million. That is cumulative from prior years. It's not necessarily specific to the TEFF and FY13. And how you can do that is you can look at it like when I did that exercise for 5 years, like you told me to. I separate DOE and from DOA. So it's accumulation of many years that built up to this certain amount. So with regards to 13, if you look at just general fund, if you deduct DOE's operational shortfall, it would still become a surplus. But we're only looking at that snapshot within fiscal year 13. So, to me, DOE, they do need a supplemental budget like what you're trying to get. I mean, from us, I agree. We do need a supplemental budget to assist DOE in recovering. I mean, it's similar to what you guys do when you reserve 2%, right? You guys only appropriate 98%. It's used to assist on deficit reduction, and the concept was to pay prior year obligations. So if anything, I'm thinking that we need to consider that reinstate.
Well, yeah, I'll turn to the budget chair in just a second.
Right.
The reason why this is just, I'm really taken aback by all this is we just came out of session, and there was a bunch of appropriations for all kinds of other things, and an additional $900,000 for marketing and those kind of things. This is education. This is one of the three pillars of education, health, and public safety. And I haven't even heard a firm number yet as to what DOE is going to need. And not only for the fiscal year, but what does DOE actually need so that we don't have these four affected areas, these small suppliers, large suppliers, other agencies? I'm looking at this other report, and I see a $7 million red line on GPA. And if we're not paying GPA on the government side, that means that the consumers are subsidizing GPA, or GPA is pushing out deferred maintenance or whatever to offset those costs. So, this all needs to get a handle on, and we need to know exactly what DOE needs. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to the budget chair because I'm sure he has his questions.
Well, I'm not going to go back to 13 and 14. I'm just going to go with just this one. If my calendar is correct, we have now completed 8 months of the fiscal year, correct? And I'm just trying to figure out, if you just go down to the very bottom line of DOE's figures, the amount that they've received, the year-to-date releases, how much are they getting per month? About 22 a month. If 137 by 8, or is that 15?
136 divided by 12, is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, their allotments, you got about 138 for 8 months.
Yeah, 136 that we gave from DOE to assist them on a different operational.
Does that come out to about 16 million a month?
I don't have it.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. But we also just recently.
All right, so they're getting everything that they're supposed to be getting. It would
Yes.
seem to me that they're out. Is it 61 plus the 15? They're out 76 still to be released?
Yeah, this other unreleased this is the
Or is it 82?
I guess the unaudited budget is 61, and the total reserve 15. So,
Yeah, it would be about 82 because
yeah,
one
yeah.
137.
Well, 79.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And 79 with 4 months, that's coming out to about 20 million a month.
Yes.
They've been getting less than what they should be getting per month. Just very simply dividing by 12.
But
So how can you say that they're getting all of their allotments?
we have done. This is the interaction with DOE. We've been giving their reserves. Yeah, all the except the reserve. Except the reserves. But we've been paying in a timely manner to all the funding that was released. We paid, and also there's other ones that you have textbooks, and we just paid the textbooks 1.2 295. I know we,
This is as of, they said this morning,
yes,
no?
yes.
So when you paid the textbooks the other day, wouldn't that be in this already?
Yes, it is there. It should be there.
Okay, so that's not anything additional, is it?
No. We owe them 159,000 that we're gonna try to.
And you
get.
keep saying TEF is short,
Well, the TEP were. In
but
fact,
they've already received 10.
Yeah. And
Is there,
We're up to.
are you paying them in 12 installments, or do they get all the TEF money as soon as it gets in?
Because there was no TEP revenues until recently, but in the interim, we've been assisting them through their allotments and other payments that they.
And so what is the collection on TEF currently?
Right now, we have 21 million thus far.
We do plan to pay them the difference.
Yeah, I mean, so their TEF wouldn't be short, would it? If we've collected 21 and their TEF appropriation 17, shouldn't they get all 17?
We do have a bond
Bond indentures, I mean, debt service
pledge
payments.
real property tax of approximately 8 million.
Yeah.
So that's
That's,
8 million, and so between
There'll be 13 left.
yeah,
you gotta add that, the 8 million,
That's right.
17.9.
And so are we going to be releasing their reserves to them?
Well,
Is there going to be a need to keep the reserves? Or, I mean, we're at the very end of the fiscal year. They need it to start up their school year.
oh, yeah.
So what are the plans going forward so that we can?
We've been working with the DOE and that whole issue. I know this is June now, and at the end of June, we can see where we're at the end of June, and we'll work with you directly.
But the remaining they still have an $80 million appropriation outstanding. There should be no need for anybody talking to us about a supplemental. No, I'm not talking about, I'm just talking about this year. Let's just stick with this.
I believe, okay,
Yeah,
Senator, I believe the appropriation total budgeted TEFF, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's around 28 million?
Yeah, 20.5.
I'm just talking
yeah.
about the bottom line on this thing right now.
He's talking about he's talking about
With regards to DOE, like I said earlier, our debt is it's pledged, so with real property tax, so we gotta
I'm not
pay
talking
that,
about the
right.
real property tax.
So
I'm
we
talking
add-
about their total appropriation.
correct.
Are you going to be releasing
We are gonna release,
214 million of it, or are you going to hold, how much of the 80 are you going to hold in reserve?
let me talk about TEFF first, the TAF, whatever we collect, we'll deduct the debt off the top, and then whatever's the net amount will be remitted to DOE.
That's
Correct.
maybe 3 million. I'm talking about 20, I'm
With-
talking about $80 million to the
Okay,
bottom
with
line.
regards to general fund, again, like the superintendent says, the law says after the third quarter, which is this month, it will end this month. As soon as we find out we're meeting our revenue projections, we would release the remaining general fund.
John, do you mind
That's
passing your mic over
substantial.
to Tony and then just turning it on? Because you're both speaking, but there's only one mic, so that way we can get everyone to hear. Thank you.
Okay.
But
And again, BBMR does release it by month, Senator. So right now we're in May, so they'll be releasing for the month of June. They don't release everything. It's for control purposes. So right now, I'll be, depending on how many months we
yeah,
are into the
in
fiscal
order
year.
for DOE to get its full appropriation, you would have to be releasing 20 million a month for the next 4 months.
Correct. All right.
I know my DI math isn't,
Let me
I may have flunked it, but 61, 15,
divide it by,
and 6 would be 80.
79.
so that's about 17.8 million a month.
Yeah,
But
for 4 months.
And but you got to remember that there is also the 3% reserves that they're withholding off the top, and that again that would depend on if we were tracking our projections for revenues.
Which we've already been told we're in the black. We just had an oversight hearing with BBMR. We just had our oversight hearing. Mr.
Yes.
Blas are being told we're in the black. Everyone's saying hunky-dory, so why is everyone
No, we're-
high and dry?
But
We're
it's a
confident
matter of
that
gas.
we'll meet.
Also the
Yeah.
match of a gas.
It's just a policy call for BBMR. It's a
we
way of,
defer to them, but
yeah, further control purposes.
But at the same time, we'll continue to assist them. I know that the end of hopefully if projections are really good, then we'll continue to. We've been assisting them nonetheless. But if we can revisit the whole issue on the 2% reserve issue at the end of the June. So
By end of June, all of this total reserve should be released. This 15 million. That's what I'm hearing, right?
the total reserves.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
the plan, yes.
So over the next 30 days, how much in total reserves is withheld throughout the rest of the government? I mean, if DOE is 15 million, what's the total of the total reserves?
I don't have the number.
Just an estimate, because I'm trying to get an idea of, wow, we're going to have this, $40 million windfall in the next 30 days? How are we going to pay out all of those total reserves by the end of June?
This is the management of cash in general. So we have to take care of tax refunds. We have to take care of other major issues as well. So, this is a cash flow tool that we use. And at the end of the day, we continue to assist them we're committed to. When I talk to Tawny, we'll be giving additional funding, hopefully this week. Through the allotment process and other.
What percentage did DOE receive in 14?
I'm sorry.
What percentage of their appropriation did DOE receive in 14?
I think, what's the
They
total?
received all their,
The whole thing.
everything,
Yeah.
100% of their appropriations.
And 13 also?
Yes. Yeah, except for
Yeah.
TF.
Correct, that's correct. Everything in general fund was paid, 13 and 14.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Senator Underwood.
So with all this, I'm actually really surprised that the total cash that was released compared to that allotment is really pretty close, because history had been that it really has been the time frame for releases has really been far and in
Yes, I
between. So
remember.
this is a pleasant surprise. I am concerned about the 7% because I know that 3% was what was set, and that does have an impact on DOE. I'm also concerned that I had heard from the superintendent that they're projecting a potential shortfall more than 5 million at this point.
So we are not the custodians of those numbers. I think the latest information that we've shared was that that was where they cited how much they've collected so far in Taft. If the hope is that they're going to collect more over the next 3 months, then that's our hope too. But I think whether it's the 2 million that they're citing, right? I think it's hopefully it's not going to be more than 2 million.
Correct.
If it's higher than that, of course, it's going to be an issue.
Okay.
Right.
So,
So-
because I'm not sure where DRT and DOA will be with the actual final numbers, but hearing that there may be an issue is a concern.
Okay, so that is a concern, because then what would be the implications for DOE with that shortfall?
This is the reason our board members have been invited. We will be sitting down and considering worst case scenarios very very shortly before we make any kind of decision. Of course, whether it's operational or from a policy budget side. What I would say though is that given the fact that we have a $13 million issue from the past that we're still trying to catch up on, I think number one is to see if we can identify any solutions to plug that hole any further. Number two would be looking at our current expenditures between now and the end of the fiscal year and what we can do to adjust. And it's a little late to make that kind of adjustment depending on the amount that we have to adjust. but to find ways to make those adjustments, and whether it's hiring, whether it's holding off on new initiatives, et cetera, we just have to discuss those items, and hopefully as a board and superintendent make recommendations as to how we can ensure that schools will open on time and that we'll have enough to get through the rest of the fiscal year. So we'll work, right now we're unclear about about what we're dealing with, but we'll look at a range of numbers and try to go best case and worst case scenario to come up with a list of recommendations.
So you just mentioned the potential holding back of new initiatives. Are you referring to the preschool pilot program, possibly?
I think that would just depend on further information, because I think that appropriation was based as well on Taft revenue. So I think anything that's impacted by Taft would have to be looked at. We would, of course, want to work with the administration as well as the legislature to preserve as much as possible, but it's all going to depend on our overall funding amount that's available this fiscal year.
Were you guys asked to bring your vendor payables, the 30/60, your aging list?
We do have that available, yes.
I think that's what they were looking for too. So
Okay.
I think if you can provide it to the chair, we can look, because I know, thankfully, I've not been receiving that many phone calls, but I know that the two of them have. So if you can show it to them.
For sure, yes. Can you get the copy with you? Okay, good. We don't have full copies for everyone, but yeah. And I think right now we're looking at about $6 to $7 million as ongoing, so outstanding payables.
7 million, 6 to 7?
Yeah.
How much of that's over 90?
1.5 million. Another 2 million between 60 and 90 days.
So 3 out of 67's 60 or less?
So, I take that information. We have about 3.5 million that's over 60 days past due to vendors. And then I'm looking over here at the Education Financial Supervisory Commission report. And I don't see that 3.5 million here. So I'm assuming that that's not included here in this tracking.
Well, my understanding is that this report is a March report.
And as I understand it, it wasn't something that you guys were discussing in EFS before, right?
This is actually year-to-date 3/31/2015.
Right, March. And our numbers are up through May.
Okay. And the reason why I'm concerned is because, already we're showing here there's the $7 million shortfall to GPA. This one here really concerns me, this $3.7 million shortfall on salary that's projected, a $744,000 shortfall on contractual, and then $3.5 million in unpaid 60-day past due.
Right,
payments.
so the way the report is run is it's based off allotments, not appropriations. So as the allotments are released, then the numbers change.
So DOA is saying that the allotments are all up to date. How are we $7 million short in our power bill?
So this
If it's all based on allotments.
Right, so the allotments are through 3/31, but the expenditures are projected through the end of the year.
Right.
So in this report is just showing the allotments released at the end of March.
Okay. So the allotments between now and the end of the fiscal year need to make up for that $7 million
Right.
shortfall.
Yes, sir.
But telling this amount here in the upper, this does not include the payables, right? The vendor payments, the vendor, this part here. My understanding is that this amount here is not reflective.
Right. What this amount doesn't include is encumbrances. But it does include all the expenditures through March. So the report that you see in front of you is all the way through May. And I think if you look on page 2, we have year-to-date expenditures and encumbrances. So we're at 147 million compared to the expenditures at March 31.
So, to get to the end of the fiscal year, how much does the department need?
We're tracking that we would need the reserves fully released.
Fully released. So by June 30th, we'll know if you guys are going to be good to go to the end of the fiscal year.
Yes, sir.
Does that also include the challenges that are as a result of the FY 2013 and 2014 Taft shortage?
No.
So you need full release of your allotment plus how much by the 30th of June?
So that we can fully catch up with all of our vendor payments?
At least to everything, keep it under net 30, everything by a net 30 basis.
We're going to need to figure out how to fund the 13 million from the prior year.
So so DOE needs $13 million. Do you guys have an itemized breakdown of what that 13 million would entail? Like what is not getting paid as a result of us not having that 13 million? I know we got the vendors, right? Okay. And so what's happening is we're basically getting our vendors are crediting us because we're deferring our payments until 60 days, 90 days, or longer. So that's how we're getting that $13 million breathing room. And this was ever since FY 2013 that we've been in this situation. I mean, because in FY 2013 it was an $8 million issue. So in FY 2014 it was $8 million worth of, I won't say kiting, I'll just say credit from vendors. And in FY 2014 it was another $5 million in vendor credits that we were using to defer these. Were we, Mr. Vice Speaker, do you recall if we were informed that we had this $8 million when we did the budget for the department? Did that include us catching up for this 13 million, BJ?
I know that we were short, but I wasn't sure. I'm sorry. I knew that TEF was short, but I didn't realize that they were carrying it forward and saying that was going to be the explanation for it. But I'm glad, because now that I know that a deficit in the prior year carries forward and needs to be made up, I guess I'm not going to hear that answer again, am I?
And the reason why it's important for us to understand this is because when we budget now, we'll know that if we want to get our payables down to net 30, we're going to have to figure out where to find another $13 million for DOE. The good news is that's a one-time appropriation that we'll need to do to get them down to net 30, because this shouldn't be recurring if the allotments and if the projections all balance, which technically they have been. It's just that the overhang from 13 and 14 have been rolling over. And it's been the vendors who've been giving us that breathing room. And see, if we had known about these kind of things, for example, I know that the Vice Speaker had a recent bill to appropriate money for the universal pre-K, which is a great idea. We all want to do, but we have this this payable that we're rolling over. Then we probably need to pay that down first before we begin funding new initiatives, And that's why we got to be very careful when we go public and we say there's no deficit. Because then it turns everything on its head and everyone begins thinking, okay, well then, since there's no overhang from prior fiscal years, then everything going forward is something that we can just look at without having to worry about looking over our shoulder. I would have been looking at the budget entirely differently if this was something that was clear. But I'm glad it's clear now.
We have $500 deficit for a long time,
right.
And so we'll be to the credit of the entire government of Guam, and I think we've been able to continue to sustain our operations and help help our needs for all of us, for Guam. So just to let you know.
Yeah, no, I understand. I mean, and just so it's clear too, for me, and my colleagues know this, I'm not much of a spender. You know, I have hardly any bills that appropriate anything. And the reason why is because, you know, I want us to make sure that we have the cash resources to be able to be meeting the projections and the obligations that we're committing ourselves to. And all I'm asking for is a crystal clear picture as to what those are so that we can fund them. Because otherwise what happens is, you know, we'll get bills from all over the place of people wanting to appropriate, you know, whenever they think that there's something tracking in the black. And if we're told that we're tracking in the black, but we don't know that we have these overhangs that we're having to, you know, work out through other different financing mechanisms. Because really, taking credit from your vendors is financing. You know, it's just that we're lucky they're not charging us interest, or they're charging it to us in the form of higher prices. You know, and so we just need to clearly understand what all those fiscal situations are, so that we can fund them appropriately. And so as we discuss, you know, the current budget, and we say that we're tracking the black for this fiscal year, the caveat is, with the exception of this $13 million overhang that the department is still having to carry forward. Are there any other situations like this throughout the government where because we're being told that overall the budget is tracking higher, revenues are tracking higher than projections, but are there any other situations like this where when you actually factor in the cost overhangs from prior fiscal years that are being creatively financed by very smart CFOs, what's the real picture fiscally?
We're tracking well thus far, and but you know, again, we have challenges. We all know that, and I know there's for the management of cash. I know the reason why we have these tools for cash management, and also from the reserve issue. If we have all the money, we can do it at one time, but you know, we have to ensure that we have to take care of the schools. We have to take care of tax refunds. We have to ensure we take care of the other obligations for us. So,
yeah, and just to like reiterate, for example, right? Because not only are we having the vendors wait, and that's one of the ways that we're financing this, but also like overtime. You know, we have to do a special appropriation in the last session just to pay that, and that's also a way that we're kind of crediting the general fund to cover our cash shortfalls.
Senator, last year, FY14, we didn't get our full reimbursement from solid waste, so that is going to be an issue this year because they're not paying us a penny, and it wasn't part of our budget. They're supposed to pay about $12 million this year, and last year they only remitted 2, and they were supposed to fund about 11. So that needs to be addressed.
And we've been anticipating that as a funding source, and we've been budgeting that, and it's just not coming in, right?
Correct. So
we need to get a firm handle on all those things.
There you go.
You
That's
and we got to stop
our
budgeting
issue.
for money we're not getting.
Thank you.
That's right, Senator. In our oversight hearing, that's the conversation we had, and we talk about TAFF, and we also talk about the solid waste. And I know we're being united in TAF as well as solid waste. That's something we've been very concerned for a long time, and we've been waiting for them to reimburse the general fund. But I can use that to take care of, for example, the operational stuff for DOE, among
but
many
Chairman
others.
asked you that question. Which one of you is going to be the one that goes to the PUC for the request? And it's been 3 years.
Isn't he the
I'm just
head of solid
saying
waste?
you need to address. You guys need to address that. You keep talking about. I'm just saying, between the two of you, you guys need to address that.
Again,
because Chairman Atta did ask that question. It's been since 2012 that they provided the data to PUC, and it's now just awaiting a request for an increase from someone. I'm just not.
I thought the tipping fee was supposed to be one of the to take care of operations and debt service, and they should have been doing that for a long time. But obviously, it's been so many years since 2008 or since that whole issue.
Just making that's not a legislative responsibility. That's on the executive side.
That's the solid waste.
And so,
who's in charge of it? That's the question. We know that.
The sad thing is, I mean, if no one wants to say they're in charge of it, unfortunately, we're budgeting with that money, and we got to stop doing that if we're not going to be able to receive it.
All we do is we just record the transactions, and that's the involvement.
Right.
I mean, we essentially.
on this aging, I note one company. I was just going through it to look at the ones that are 90 days. Tyler Technologies. What's that? 151,000, and they haven't been paid in 90 days, or at least it's.
That's our new financial management system.
But there's the new. Who's Alvarez and Marshall?
Our third-party fiduciary.
Okay, so Tyler is owed 151
Yes.
for your financial management. And they're the ones that are owed 151,000, and they don't have anything at 60 to 90, and they don't have anything at 0 to 30, but their total payable is 151 that hasn't been paid in close to 90 days, right?
We are trying to pay some of the larger invoices a little bit at a time.
Well, I'm looking at the larger invoices that are 90 days. I mean, there's DMR, there's Houghton Mifflin, there's a couple of others, but JB Modern Tech, they have a 60 to 90 day payable of 145, and then two smaller ones that come up to about 30. How were those air conditioners? The JB Modern Tech?
Likely air conditioned. But we also do, we have a equipment repair and maintenance. I'm not sure if they're also the vendor.
Wouldn't they need to be the vendor for the repair? Or because
Kitchen
didn't we
equipment.
already go through?
Kitchen equipment.
But I thought you guys had a big fight over if you let another technician touch our air conditioners,
Yes,
we're no longer responsible
they are
for
the
it.
air conditioner. Yeah, they're primarily, our contract with them is primarily air conditioning related. But what I'm saying is that they might also have a smaller contract for kitchen repair and maintenance, kitchen equipment repair and maintenance.
Okay. No, I was just looking to try to see what the large 90-day, and I mean 90 days, these are 90 days and over, I'm sorry, it's not 60 to 90, it's the 90 days and over. And those are the ones, and it doesn't even say how many days over 100, and I mean over 90 days, but those were the ones that are 90 days and over. And it just seems to me an interesting set that you would have of, and I noticed that GWA allows you to have 60 to 90, but GPA is absolutely current. It's interesting.
Well, I was also like a little surprised here and a little worried that the retirement fund has a 90-day and over balance. Don't we have a? What is that?
We're negotiating with them over some penalties. Because we're paying late, we get penalties.
Superintendent.
I mean, I think as you look through the list, you'll see that again, this is a snapshot, and it does reflect the term you use, vendor credits, and the relationships with the vendors to try to negotiate absolute timeframes for trying to make payment or partial payment. So this is the juggling act that's going on, trying to make the current resources meet some of the obligations. Some of your smaller suppliers will not go to 90 days because they can't, so we're going to try to get them earlier so they don't hit that 90 days, versus some of the larger ones are able to keep floating that, and while we are able to try to get them some partial payments over time. So that's how we're doing. Alvarez and Marcel is one of them. They're not at 90 days, but that's because we're looking and trying to make sure we don't run into those additional issues with federal funds. So we, at a certain point in time, will try to make sure they're whole for at least a certain period. But that's what when you said vendor credit, exactly how this looks. Some of the suppliers are able to go and we try to negotiate so we don't interrupt services, and some aren't, so we pay them earlier than 90 days.
But man, I mean, this is a lot of work, and I credit to you guys for being able to manage it. But the reality is that, this takes away from the biggest business of education. And if they were just given the funding that they were required to meet these obligations, then we wouldn't be having our superintendent, who's obviously very knowledgeable about this, spending his time trying to understand what the status is of 30, 60, 90 past due payables. Everything should be under 30 for these vendors. I mean, and that way the department can focus on the mission of education and not trying to figure out, okay, can we pay this guy because they can last longer than that guy? I mean, wow, it's very impressive that they're able to manage like that, but the reality is that they shouldn't have to. So 13 million, well, do we know that if we add up telling all this 60 to 90 and 90 and over, you're saying that will come out to 13 million? Here we are.
Our payables hover between 6 and 7.
So we're looking at 3.3 million just to bring all of our vendor payables current or to bring them to cover all the 60 to 90, 60 and over. But if we do the ones that are older than 30, 1.5, we're looking at 4.8 million. 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
I was mishearing. I kept hearing 67. 6 to 7.
6 to 7. Yes. No, don't
Yes.
worry. So we're at 4. So to get everybody caught up from get everything current on the vendor side, it's a $4.8 million appropriation. Okay, so I'm trying to reconcile now then this Taft shortage, because we're told that the Taft shortage affected small suppliers, large suppliers, the third-party fiduciary, and other agencies, but aren't all of those 4 affected areas here in the receivables aging? So of this 13.3 million of Taft shortage, we now, in order to just get current, just need to come up with another 4.8 supplemental for the vendors. And that will pretty much catch us up with all the Taft shortfalls of the past. Unless there's other areas that was affected by the Taft shortfalls.
What we've been able to do because of the support of DOI is we've been able to cover a portion of our outstanding payables that do not show up here, to enable us to get to at least managing just this amount. Otherwise, we would be dealing with that full $13 million amount. So these are funds that were intended for technology support into the schools to fund instructional technology that we've had to delay, hopefully to be replenished with the funds that were supposed to come in from Taft.
So DOI authorized you guys to spend money that they
we have funds that are identified as operational offsets, but the commitments made publicly and with the governor's office on certain, we've looked at trying to push that into the classrooms in terms of instructional technology. Some of those funds have had to been used afloat while we wait to see we'll get the necessary funding to account for all the payables that have been outstanding. Now, this is it's not a grant that is grant specific. It's broader than that, giving us discretion to utilize those funds. But we've had to delay the intention of using those for instructional technology to push these.
Well, but just to bring us a status quo, though, I mean, so technically that money that was credited because it was provided by DOI does not need to be paid back. I mean, if you spent it for another purpose, understandably you wanted it for that reason. I'm trying to get a firm handle on what the status is.
We will get the amounts specifically, but the amounts are provided as an operational offset, which can be used to offset the needs of the department. I think the issue there was that it was not to, I don't think the intention was to fund a shortfall or an underfunded budget. I think the issue there was and as we received those funds, we dedicated it to be used in instructional technology, but it was never required that be the use by DOI. So for the past couple of years, we've been able to bridge some of these issues with regard to the additional, the amount beyond the 6.5 in age payables, to try to hold us steady, and otherwise it would be a more dire situation. These are not, but these are not required, and that was the inquiry with the Department of Interior to ensure that there wasn't any limitation on that.
Okay. Because my goal in looking at all this is just how do we get to a status quo budget where we don't have that overhang from prior fiscal years holding us down. We've redirected, from what you're saying, we've reprogrammed DOI money with the intent of reimbursing that for its originally intended purpose. But if I'm hearing you clearly, that's not exactly necessary that we do that. It's ideal, but it's not a requirement.
I think that's the reason why we're trying to get a handle on Taft, so that any funds that are meant to supplement our educational system will be used for those purposes. Unfortunately, what's happened is that we continue to work with these gaps because of the shortfall that we've seen over the past couple of years, and if we see it again this year, it'll continue to exacerbate that amount, and without a guarantee of any other support from other resources. So, for instance, the funds that we do get from USAID are meant to be completely supplementary. So that if we do end up with issues, if we can't use those for other purposes, those will be used for the purposes that were intended by the grant. However, so as we go forward, our issue is how do we solve this structure of our budget so that we are conservatively budgeting and can then and therefore rely on the stream of revenues intended to support the schools.
Right. Right. And so for me, the number I'm looking at right now to at least take care of everything that's 30 days past due is $4.8 million. And that'll get us to even for this fiscal year.
Mr. Chairman, so basically just going back, my concern is that what would have been intended, the instructional technology, which is real important. So we're now affecting the actual learning, the instructional, the quality of learning that our students are supposed to have, right? Because the funds would have had to been redirected.
I think the issue is that we are unable to, and I would caution that we launch any new initiatives if we do not see that there are going to be eventual solutions, right? So I think that whether it's with additional technology or whether it's with early learning, with other new initiatives, we'd have to ensure that there is a funding source that we can rely on and not dig our hole deeper.
Right, but going back, the funding for DOI initially was intended to go directly to the students. That's what you had just noted. But you've had to redivert it because there wasn't enough funding provided for your operations.
Correct, and we would hope so. We do use other resources to inject into our schools for technology purposes, and this was intended to supplement those. Right, so we use consolidated grant funds, for instance, and we've used our funds in the past to support technology investments. This would have been in addition to that.
Right, but what would you have purchased with these funds?
Right, it would have been additional.
Additional
equipment and training on top of all
training.
of that. Right.
Could we get them to just pick up what they're mandating us to have, like Marshall and Alvarez and Tyler? Just pay that themselves.
Yeah, I'm sorry. If anybody else has any questions or comments, please.
I believe earlier you were asking if there was any opportunity for the Department of Education to make known the FY13 shortfall in the TAF of 8.3 and the FY14 of 5 million. And correct me if I'm wrong, John, didn't the department submit supplemental budgets in both years?
Yes, we did, and we tend to flag it as well with our ongoing budget requests. So I know we have a new chair of our committee, but prior to that, we did just acknowledge that this is a continuing issue with TEF. It's just that this year we had hoped to actually, and I think many people were more confident that we would reach the projection, and so this year we're hoping that occurs.
So we do have a lot of hope for this year that we're going to track, and we don't need a supplemental. No, I mean,
for us,
yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, we're hoping that it'll be tracking correctly. So,
I didn't mean we won't need a supplemental. We won't have to compound. The prior.
The other issues that the shortfalls for TEFF. Well, for us, I guess on the 2015 budget, we're hopeful that we'll continue to assist them and with the cash that we have before us. So the shortfall again, there's some challenges for us. We're hopeful.
So can I request from DOA, as we try and get a firmer handle on the financial picture, so that we understand what the obligations are, aside from what we're reporting on Gatsby, what are all of our payables that are past due for 30 days? You know, almost similar to what we have here from DOE, showing us the total amounts here, maybe even give us the sources, like what agencies are deferring their payables, so we can understand what that total comes out to.
Yeah.
And just, you know, advance warning, I can understand DOE's situation because of the Taft shortfalls, but we didn't have, or I don't know what shortfalls were in fiscal year 2013 or 2014 that other agencies will come back and say are causing them to fall behind on their vendor payables. But if there weren't any shortfalls, and if everything was tracking at the rate that it was supposed to be tracking at, and if the money did come in that we said was coming in, then there shouldn't be anybody past 30 days past due, unless we're under budgeting them.
I don't think it's under budget, because if you look at it, if they had been receiving their allotments, if they had received 8 months of allotments divided by 12 from the original appropriation, they would have surplus funds. Because here we're showing 4.7 million in 30, 60, and above 90, but actually they're short about $9 million.
Well, again,
And probably more than that, actually.
Yeah.
It should be 150 something. It's probably closer to 15.
This is the
So if they just got a little more, they would be current.
I think we've released. In fact, we're we're talking to working with Tolling, and we this week we'll get.
I know. If Kathy would just tell me what 1/12 of 214 would be times 8.
All right.
140.
I was able to analyze their budget. Okay, what's essentially happening is you take the total appropriation column A, which is 214,933,196, and you deduct the 3% off the top, which is the last column of 6.6, and then what BBM does is they divide it by 12, and then release the allotments from there. So we're already 8 months in the fiscal year. So if you take the 112 multiplied by 8, it's tracking the allotment release, which we are paying.
I understand. And I'm just saying, if we didn't have the reserve and you're going to release it to them anyway,
Correct.
if they had already been receiving it,
The 6.6.
they would have more than enough to be absolutely current.
We plan to
Well,
release
I mean,
it
that's
until
current with respect to what their allotment schedule is. But these 90 days and these 30 days past due are rollovers that track back all the way to 2013. And so what's happening is as they pay some of them off.
It would still be, they would be able to make their payments if you guys would just not hold.
Again, BBMR will do their controls. In fact, I know that for line agencies, they reserve up to 15% of their appropriations. So it is a shared, we do share on the withholding of allotments.
But the reality is that when we have these reserves, it's not just reserves that are affecting nobody. What happens is that the agencies turn around and take credit from their vendors in order to cover these reserve shortfalls. Because that's partially what's happening here. Because if there wasn't any reserves, then at least the vendors could get all paid up. But don't get me wrong, I understand that we still would have about a $4 to $5 million shortfall in the current budget when you actualize everything that you've anticipated for the fiscal year. But I mean, I just wanted to make it clear on the record that this idea of reserves is not a harmless practice. What happens is it forces agencies, whether it's DOE or any other line agency, to take credit from their to take credit from their vendors and to defer vendor payments, for example, because the allotments are not coming in at 100%.
And also you got to look at it at the flip side. Like I mentioned, solid waste. We had advanced the landfill debt for a total of $15 million. Solid waste is supposed to reimburse us 12. We haven't got a penny. So that ate up the the 12 million was eaten up in advance, so that's 12 million less we have to pay for DOE and everybody else. So there's other factors that we need to look at besides just the revenue.
So that's the second time you brought that 12 million. How is that going to affect DOE? Because
Well, like I said, the landfill debt, the payment source is Section 30. So when we receive the Section 30 from U.S. Treasury, the 15 million, the trustee withholds that. So it's 15 million less that we have in Section 30.
For the
to
general
pay.
fund.
Correct.
But the board member's question is, how does that directly correlate to the shortfall for DOE? And the answer is that it isn't a dollar-for-dollar correlation. The
That's correct.
shortfall from that amount, it affects the government-wide general fund revenues.
It does,
Right.
but
And
DOE accounts for
DOE accounts for
substantial.
a
Yes.
portion of that, yeah.
Yes,
Right.
understood.
So of that 12 million, how much of that would have gone to DOE?
What's the percentage of
Can you just take a percentage of their budget? I don't have that on top of my head.
Right.
Senator.
it's a lot of money that we could be used to paying this $4.9 million.
Right.
Education is the biggest side.
So it should be proportionate to their budget, right?
Yeah, there you go. But we don't do that. We go ahead and pay 100% of general fund, although we don't receive, we don't have the benefit of using the full Section 30 that we're allotted to.
So, I mean, I'm pretty much done here. My conclusion is DOE needs another $4.8 million in order to make up for all of its vendor past due payables, 30 days plus past due. Maybe we can figure out how to reprogram money that we programmed into other areas, maybe the universal pre-care, whatever. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a great program, but if we're going out and funding new initiatives while we still have past due obligations that the current budget isn't going to be able to cover, then we need to realistically assess that and make a decision as a policymaker. DOA, from you guys, I'm just going to need an idea of what the entire government situation is with respect to these past due, these payables. Because everything should always be current based on the allotments and the tracking, and the only reason why anything should be 30 days past due is because we over budgeted or we had some kind of a shortfall somewhere. And so I'd just like to get a picture of what that is throughout the entire government, so that when we go into the budget for next fiscal year, if we want to prioritize that and appropriate to get us current to everything, that's something that we'll need to really look at and decide on. So I'd like to request that from DOA, and if the Department of Education chair has any requests, and if any of the board members have any requests, unless they're okay with us at least trying to find 4.8 million more for the department.
Well, how about if we have a continued hearing the first week in July? This 3% mandate is not statutory, am I correct? And the 3% reserve is to be released if we are tracking. And unless you're ready to announce that you're not, by the 1st of July, the 3% should be released.
7%, 15 million.
The full 15 million in 30 days. That's why I was asking.
So, I mean, it would seem to me, unless you're ready to announce that we're not collecting the revenue as we said we were, that entire amount should be released by the 1st of July.
Yeah, maybe you need to allow us time to reconcile with
Oh,
DRT.
reconcile will take us until next December. The way that you guys reconcile, it takes
Here's
6 months.
what I'm going to do for this hearing, okay? I'm going to turn on my blinders for everything else, and I'm going to say for DOE, July 1st, 15 million released. We're here for DOE. We're here talking about DOE, so let's just make sure that we're going to get the firm commitment that DOE is getting their full $15 million released by the 1st of July, which is the deadline on the allotment. And we'll come away with that commitment, and then we'll talk some more about the rest of the obligations, and maybe those other obligations we can factor into the budget for 2016.
Senator, we have the management of cash as well, so we'll continue to work with, because we'll continue to do the allotment releases and all that, and and also the TEF. But we're gonna get some funding hopefully this week or early next week. But again, remember this is a peaks and valleys for us.
I understand, but the commitment, the discussion was that by the end of this month, the full reserve should be released if we're tracking in the black, right? I mean, that's what we said earlier.
Yeah, well, at the same time, but remember, this is the entire government, so we have to make sure we take care of.
And I'm just talking about DOE right now.
Yeah.
And so, since we're here just talking about DOE.
DOE is one, and also, again, let's be aware of all the other complications we have. So.
All I'm asking is let's all be forthright.
Sure.
I think it's imperative that we be honest with each other. If there is a deficit, then admit it. Don't say there's a surplus when there isn't. And if there is a deficit, then admit it, and the reserve can continue. But if you're not willing to admit it, then don't come back to us and tell us that we're in the black. We're 3% ahead, or we're 5%, or we're on the target. Be honest.
Yes, I agree.
And what just compounds it and makes it so important is we're going into budget sessions coming into a next fiscal year. And so if the fiscal realities aren't matching up for the current fiscal year, then we need to mitigate that in FY 2016.
Yes.
And it'll be uncomfortable but necessary if we have a full understanding of what the financial picture is.
Sure.
And so in line with what the Vice Speaker said about us, being honest about the situation, just an hour ago we were told that by the end of June, the third quarter is going to be reconciled and everything's going to be released, unless I heard wrong. And if I didn't hear wrong, then are we going to be able to say, and we're just talking about DOE right now, that DOE's $15 million is going to be released on July 1st?
Senator, I told you, we have to look at the entire management report.
So if the answer is no, sir, then how much?
We'll continue to work with DOE.
Because DOE needs to understand too, because DOE, if we didn't get into this, if we didn't get into this level of the conversation, DOE would have left this meeting, all the board members would have left this meeting thinking, okay, 30 days, we're going to be good to go, we're going to get 15 million coming in. But now you're telling me that we can't guarantee that. So what number can we have DOE walk away from today and say, of this 15 million, yeah, 2/3 of that for sure will be able to get you by the 1st of July?
Again, I guess we'll continue to do the allotments, and we're up to speed, except for up to date with of course, with section 1.277, and I told you earlier, we're going to get some funding for them, hopefully by this week or early next week. But I know, again, working with DOE, we are up to date with everything we have before us.
So 15 million by July 1st?
It's easy to
I'm
say
opening
that.
the door,
It's
sir,
easy-
for you to.
It's easy to say that,
But you,
again, I want to be
you're the
responsible
one.
for
You
it.
guys are the ones that said that.
I know. No, I
So-
said, I'm telling you right now that we're trying to do whatever we can to assist DOE, and we
Okay.
will. And we're committed. We're fully committed.
But you can't say that you're up to date in your allotment releases,
We
because
are.
you're up to date on your allotment releases minus the
The
reserves.
reserve, correct.
Yes, that's right.
We're
So make it, complete the sentence. Don't leave it.
I'm just telling you right now, we're up to date with our allotments from the approved.
With the
reserve
releases. I mean, with the reserves.
Reserves.
We're doing that.
Because if they had gotten everything, they would have an additional 8 million in their pocket right now and been able to pay all this off.
So for the sake of DOE planning, of this
Yes.
15 million by the 1st of July, how much are you anticipating? I mean, it doesn't need to be a firm commitment, but I mean, just so everyone has a number in their head for July 1st, of the 15 million, how much are you going to be releasing to DOE, which was 100% an hour ago, but what percentage now?
Well, I guess we were working with you, I'm chairman, all the chairmans.
I think everybody here deserves, after all the time we put in today, sir, I think everybody needs a
We're putting
commitment.
together.
Everyone needs a
Well,
commitment.
they've been short $1 million a month. The least you could at least give them is their 8 that you've withheld.
Right.
The very least.
Right, because the 3% is 6 million, so at least the 8
Right.
of the 15.
Of the 15.
Well, again, we'll
Just to
work
be up to
with
date.
And you
But-
can get their last
What were the
for
checks?
the, but the thing is that they've been short. It's not up to date. They've been short 1 million a month.
Yeah.
And this is just isn't DOE waiting for the money. It's all these vendors here
You know,
who they can probably start making good on
Mr.
if they got the
Chair.
funds.
But not to I just want to underscore that when we short them, and they have to prepare for the opening of schools, the implications
okay.
there are tremendous. So when we're talking about making sure that we get at least 8 million, yes, we need that commitment, because I know what it's like to open, try to open the school and not
That's
have.
something we are fully committed, to ensure that we're going to assist them, especially with the August. And also, Senator, I know this is something you'll be with us in assisting them big time, so. We have been
So
let's very close as well.
So our dollar amount for the 1st of July is what?
Well, we'll wait and we'll work with you very soon. And let's see where we're at here. It's only June 1st.
It's 30 days until.
We'll work with you, because I guess we're in constant communication with all you guys.
But the department and the board and the students and the vendors, I think that they deserve a commitment at this
Sure.
point in the conversation.
Well, we continue whatever we have before us. We continue to assist them.
So the answer is you cannot give me a commitment on any amount by the 1st of July.
Again.
If you're not going to answer the question, then at least say you're not going to answer the question.
What we should do is wait until June is over, because June is one of our our peak collection month. So it's too early to say right now. That's what Tony's trying to say. So if you want to come back on July 1st, how about we do that and then get a better understanding of what we're going to move forward. But we are committed to paying 100% of the appropriation. It's just that the timing, as far as how much by July 1st, we cannot commit to that. That's what we're trying to say.
So if DOE cannot get the full 15 million or 50% of the 15 million or 5% of the 15 million, if we can't get that kind of a commitment by July 1st, then when can they have an idea of when that reserve is finally going to start going into their coffers? Because that's what's choking them. And if they can't anticipate 15 million in 30 days or 7 million in 30 days, then when are they going to get any of that money?
Because I guess we're working with you guys. We are working with you, Senators.
Okay, then maybe I need this answer today.
Sure.
Are we on target with our revenue projection? Or are we going to have a deficit for this year? Or revenue shortfall, if you don't want to use deficit.
Again, we're just waiting for, at the end of June, we'll find out where we're at, so July 1st, it's something for us to look at and see where we're at that time.
The 21st of May was last week, and you've started already to prepare the reports.
Yes.
What does it look like as of May the 21st? What is collections?
Right now with our collections, as for example, TFF, right? And that's we're tracking about 21 million right now. So again,
how about general fund?
The general fund I don't have it in front of me, but I can give you the information we have and let you know where we're at.
Okay. Because I mean that's
probably has more detailed information there.
I'm sorry. I know that maybe other senators are like, when they say, "Oh, we'll get back to you," or "We'll call you," they're okay with that. But I'm really not okay with that. Okay. If DOE was supposed to get 100% by July 1st, and they're not going to get 100%, then what are they going to have, and when are they going to have it? Because the fiscal year ends October 1st. A huge number of these vendors here on this list are the very vendors that they're going to go and buy floor polish from, and paper towels from, and doors, and louvers, and toilet seats. And if they cannot even pay their vendors in the next 30 days to begin buying those things that the maintenance crew can go in there and fix it, then when are they going to get it, and how is that going to affect everything else after that? It's very unfair for the Department of Education to have to sit back and figure out how they're going to open up school when they don't even when the Department of Administration cannot even tell them when they're going to be getting them the money to do that. So the 15 million, July 1st, or what percentage of that? We need a commitment. The department needs a commitment. They need to be able to plan around that.
Senator,
That's not unreasonable to ask.
We're fully committed to assist helping DOE. I mean, without a doubt. And with major issues before them, I know working with DOE, I know John Fernandez recently with the utilities, and even with the TF, I guess shortfalls. Nonetheless, because we want to assist them in every way. We've been doing it, and we continue to do that. So don't worry, Senator. We're fully committed to help those guys. I mean, really, and it's easy for you to say that.
So fully,
there's been shortfalls that happen. That's the challenges they have. They have contractual obligations. We know that. But again, we're fully committed. I'm going to we'll assist them, and we're in constant communication. We'll continue to say where we're at.
So when you say fully committed, that's 100% of 15 million. That's fully.
No, that's 100%.
Unless you're saying you're partially committed.
DOE, and we are doing whatever we can to
so
help
you're fully committed.
With the resources that we have before us, Senator. With the resources we have, I can't just say this is the amount that you want immediately. Again, I remind you, we have other obligations as well. So the management of cash, whatever we can, we will, and nonetheless, that's one of the number one priorities for us.
Well, if education was under my authority, I'd be dissatisfied with that answer. So I'll defer to the board members and ask, board members, are you satisfied with them stating that they are fully committed, or do you need some kind of firm figure for you guys to be able to plan around?
We like a firm figure or timing, or as soon as you know, please let us know about it so we can plan with superintendent.
Yeah, we're working with them right now.
Senator, I'll be very honest.
Can we pass the mic to him?
I am not satisfied. Okay? Number one, we have an obligation under the Adequate Education Act, okay, that these students are supposed to be fully funded with certain stipulations, fully certified. Okay, when we cut corners, we're cutting their education. So therefore, that commitment has got to be said, well, we're fully committed, but we can't give it to you. And I'm dissatisfied, Tony, because, for Senator, this, in the past years, what was the projection? Can we project from the state? Because we can project. Projection is really usually based on what we call on situations that's really occurring. We're seeing what we call economic upturn, and when we put that in, then can we put in some sort of a definitive or maybe 50% definitive answer that we're really going to get this, because we have Senator. We have a serious responsibility of an obligation to provide adequate education. If the adequate education is impacted from, this is going to be impacting. This already impacted, the adequate education. Because if I was a vendor, I know it's easy for me to say, but if I was a vendor, I can't live anymore. And if I can't live anymore, why should I continue to let you live? So it's a mutual obligation, and therefore, Mr. Director, there has to be a better definitive answer as opposed to really what we call the wishy-washy. Pardon the expression. The wishy-washy, same thing. Let's make it. We're dealing with figures.
Okay.
We're dealing with figures, and the last figure from last year, okay, should be used really as a point of focus. This year, we're saying that there's already starting to be an increase in what do you call that? An increase in economic opportunity. But we are shortchanging our students, because these things, when not provided, I give credit to the vendors who just continue to give it. But then I hear a threat that, we may be threatened by the A&M, just because the Federales said they're going to threaten us on that one, Hey, wait a minute, and we need to negotiate that too. Okay? And internally, we're going to be looking at that. Because, they're supposed to be coming around. We should anticipate what are they thinking of doing to us. Because we can't just be sitting ducks. Because we already have 10 years of experience. And the latest experience is that they're going to be coming. In the past years, they never came. So therefore, we cannot just say, because I think it's more the more good faith efforts.
Sure.
And the good faith effort says it's really got to be done because we're dealing with dollar signs. Good faith efforts is not to say 1/2 and 1/2 equals really, one. And in the same instance, then okay, you want to do it that way, then say 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 is going to be 1 because you have divided it into 4 quarters. But right now we're the last fourth, and then the first 3/4 have not been satisfied. Based on this, what they call addition, subtraction, or formula that we really are giving. So it is. The short change is really with the students, and the short change is really the vendors, which is really all part of our community. It's the total village really that we're talking about. So it's got to be satisfied somehow a bit more definitively.
Sure.
Not just to wait until June 30th. We can't wait until June 30th, and you just figuring it out. 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4. Okay, what's the next fourth? But the 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 has not been satisfied. Okay, because we're saying that you are satisfying us because that according to what they've given us, I know that they've given us only 3%, and the other ones have been given a higher rate. So that much we really appreciate. We appreciate that the governor's contention in that regard. But there's got to be a bit more definitive answer because we're talking about budget, and budget is really dollar signs, and dollar signs is really what makes our economy really go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, former chairman.
Thank you.
Representative Dr. Cruz.
Again, Mr. Chair, I'm telling you right now, we told you, we spelled out what we can do and what we've been doing thus far. In 2014, again, we have some shortfalls on the TEF, and even 2013, 14. So nonetheless, they made the attempt to assist you guys to get supplemental budgets for them, and so this is the cumulative effect over up to 2015. But nonetheless, we're going to do our part here, and we're committed to assist and to give you whatever we can to give you guys. And at 2000, the end of June, hopefully we can do it earlier if we can. But we're fully committed to help DOE, and without a doubt.
I just want to make one thing clear. All right, I think like 10 times we've used the excuse of TEFF. And the projection. That projection was sent to us by the administration. Right? The delay in getting the RFP out and the appraisal done was not the legislature. All right? I just want to make that very, very clear. It's not a legislative, we weren't the ones that dropped the ball.
On my side, what happened and who asked for what, that's neither here nor there. For me, I'm not the kind of, I don't get too caught up in those kind of things. For me, what I get caught up on is how much are they going to have on July 1st when they're supposed to have 15 million? And if the answer is a firm commitment and the board members who have the authority over education at this time are dissatisfied with that, then as a chairman, I have to also be dissatisfied with that. And so I'm going to allow you some time, sir, to go back to the drawing board and to do some reconciliations. What we'll do is we'll recess the roundtable. And do you need maybe 3 days? 3 days before you can come back and give a firm number on. Again, the chairman was or Dr. Cruz is absolutely right. These are projection-based budgets. So based on the tracking, based on the projections from prior fiscal years, what can you comfortably say is going to be released to DOE from this reserve, not just from the ordinary allotment schedule, but from this reserve for July 1st? The board has asked for a firm number, and as chair, I'm going to have to request that we get at least some kind of idea. So how many days, sir, do you need to be able to reconcile a figure?
I can give you the specific time. Like I said, we have again we're looking at projections and see where we're at, and I can let you know. I'll call you and let you know, see where we're at.
So have the roundtable reconvene in the next 3 days? I think that's very reasonable.
I think 3 days is, in 3 days I can give you the same answer you want.
So how many days in order for you to be able to do a projection review and assumption of how much they're going to get July 1st?
I can let you know. I can call you and maybe I can have a good timing for us to revisit the issue.
The report's due after the 21st of June.
Yeah, so we
So,
have to look at this.
We should know by after the 21st of June
Yeah.
when your report is due
Maybe this- around
to
the same
know
time.
what it's going to, where we're at
Yeah.
and where your projections are at,
That's right.
and whether or not we're going to be forthright about where we're at.
Okay.
Because if you insist
Yeah,
in your
that's right.
in your revenue report and your projection that we're still in the black and we're way ahead, we're going to, then
Yeah.
there's not going to be any excuse. The 9 million that they're owed is to be paid.
Okay.
But if you're going to be honest about where we are financially and we're in a deficit, then the 3% can be withheld. But without that admission, their 9% is due on the 1st of July.
All right.
I mean, 9 million.
Well, yeah, they're supposed to have, you're supposed to be only withholding 6, and for the record, you're withholding 15. So you're withholding more than the 3% that you said you're going to be withholding. Now, what we asked earlier was at least by the 1st of July, can you commit to releasing the 9 and then work on the 6? But that can't, you're not ready to commit to that yet. And so the question now is, what can you commit to? And you're not able to commit to that either. And so the question now is how many days you need to be able to determine what you can commit to, and you can't even commit to that.
I said,
So I need something. I need something.
Because I guess our reports are due on June.
On the 21st of every month, you have to have the report
Yeah,
for the
so-
previous
so
month.
maybe
So
right to
you'll
that.
know where it's at,
I see
and
where
you
we're
can
at.
then tell us what the
Where we're at.
financial condition is
At
of
that
the
time,
government.
I can tell you exactly where we're at and see where we're at.
So today is June 1st, and it's going to take you 20 days. It's going to take
For the
20
reports.
days to be able to figure out if you're going to be able to release anything on July 1st to the Department of Education.
We have to wait for the projections to happen with the collections where we're at, and I know those are the of course GRTs in 20 million. I mean at the 20th, not 20 million, 20th, and so.
We were in session last week, so I didn't have a chance to review the report from the 21st of May. Were we in the black, and were we projecting
I
on?
don't have the May report.
Well, I mean, between the
We
three of
just-
you,
We're working this right
but
now. And May.
you weren't admitting to a deficit in that report.
I said we're tracking right now. So I didn't say that anything more than that. I can let you. I don't have the. We're working on projections right now and see. I mean the projections, the reports for the 20th. So
And that would be as of the 30th of May.
May. Yeah.
We go into session on the 15th of June. My concern is that, without having a firm understanding of the financial position, we're not going to be able to take any kind of legislative action in the June session. That'll push us back into July. And so if we wait for June 21st...
If the collections are good, then and it'd be better. Then that's something I'm saying. Wait
Right,
until
but
the
for me, right, I'm trying to figure out what action do we need to take if those collections don't turn out the way we want them to. And if we wait till June 21st and they come back and we're not able to reconcile that 15 million, that's going to leave only the July session for us to try and appropriate something to try and help the Department of Education out. And that'll give them the month of August, whatever is left in there, to be able to scramble around and get the schools open. And I mean, we can see the train coming at us 10 miles away. And all I'm asking is, can you tell me, what time it's expected to hit? If it's going to hit, or if it's not going to hit, then what time is it going to arrive? Because then we can plan appropriately. But if we keep on with this business that's plagued this government for a very long time, this business of, we'll tell you later and we'll call you up and then we'll work it out and then we'll kind of get by the next day, then I can already tell you that we're going to probably put the Department of Education into a tight bind by rushing some kind of legislative action in July and then giving them the month of August to try and fix it. And we don't need to do that anymore. All I'm asking is how much are they going to have come July 1st? That way when you tell me the number, I can ask DOE, is that going to be sufficient for you to be able to get school opened and to get these vendor payments down? And if they come back and they say no, then I can say then we're going to work on introducing something to get more funding. But we can't get to A, B, C until we know A. And so I don't understand why there's a reluctance to give us a figure. We don't need to promise the world and deliver it. We just need to be realistic with our people and move from there.
Is that what we're doing? We're being very realistic.
So realistically, what can DOE anticipate? Realistically, what can DOE anticipate?
For you to say that, Achan, it's so easy. We again, on 2 different occasions, the legislature's been asked to help them out to take care of this cumulative operational shortfalls that they have. And it's easy for you to blame DOA. And DOA is not the, again, we're the ones that we give them whatever funding that we have before us, and we continue to give them in a timely manner. And nothing more than that. And so it's easy for, take the reserve. Of course, we have the money, Senator, without a doubt. They have the funding. But again, we're managing cash for the entire government. And so we're doing our part here. And again, we're waiting for when get some more concrete information about where we're at. There's a good snapshot of whether or not we can continue to use the reserves or not. That's the question before us.
So we're not going to get any kind of a figure for July 1st?
I can't do it right now. I can't. I'm not.
So how many days do you need to be able to do it?
I told you already, after the 20th, I mean the June 20th report.
No, but I'm explaining to you why June 21st becomes problematic from a legislative calendar perspective. Okay. And, you know, I think that the agency has the resources and the capability to be able to do this before 21 days. I mean, if you can't figure out if you're going to have any money by July 1st within 21 days, that's probably an even scarier proposition. So how much can, or what, when can we come back together? When can we come back and sit down and get a figure as to how much we can anticipate in July 1st?
Maybe later on, we can let you know where we're at on that. You know.
According to your most recent report, you're supposedly tracking 4.2 million above.
4.2, and that's what
above estimate. So there's no reason to keep any reserve.
That's what I'm saying. We can work with you guys on that.
But can we come back and get a firm commitment in this hearing 3 days from now?
Okay.
We'll recess and come back 3 days from now and have a conversation.
All right.
Okay?
We'll see where we're at.
Okay, thank you. Would that be okay with the department for us to come back within the next 3 days and get a firm figure from the Department of Administration? Okay. Thank you, Dr. Cruz. I'm so used to calling you Mr. Chairman. You've been my chairman forever. We'll go ahead and recess this hearing at 4 o'clock this afternoon. The committee will figure out what day in the next, what time in the next 3 days we can have this roundtable reconvene, and we will notify all parties via email and phone call when we'll be coming back in the next 3 days to get a firm figure for the July 1st release of the allotments. Thank you all very much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Your TDFF is showing